You can start now.
Well, here we are, live
Hi,
again.
everyone.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Maliah and Walter Saturday show,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
We made it. We were not here last week because we were in San Diego. Well, we had made it back Saturday afternoon.
We were in Encinitas and Solana Beach and
Right.
Temecula.
Suburbs of San Diego.
On business, both Empire of the Wheel TV development, a little bit, but mostly to engage in a business meeting on another project that we're going to tell you about in the very near future. Something that you're going to find interesting and is unlike the other stuff that I've published through my company, and that unlike what we've talked about here. It's going to be interesting, and we'll tell you about that soon, but we were primarily down there to make an introduction on that other project, and we discussed a little Empire of the Wheel TV business. So that's why we weren't here last Saturday.
Last Saturday.
But here we are. Oh, Paul Reedy is in the live chat there. Hello, Paul. Corey 42, Richard Mills, D. Dorothy Pep. Paul and I knew each other in high school, and we were in the same Boy Scout troop.
Paul Reedy?
Yeah.
I've seen him here a few times.
So, D. Dorothy, Elizabeth Russell, Old Gaffer. Is that Toha? Okay, so today is actually an associative topic to the next Wednesday live stream. And I'm going to do a little intro to give you some context. Now, many of you have heard of the term wandering bishop. The technical term is Episcopus Vagans. And let me give you a definition so that you know what we're talking about, because this particular thing appeals to one of the archetypal problems, bad guys in human society, and that, of course, is the narcissist. But let me set the context in defining Episcopus Vagans for you. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the Episcopus Vagans is a bishop consecrated in a clandestine or irregular way. Okay, they are outside canon law and structure. They very often they will be found very often excommunicated from their main church organization and not in communion with a traditional, well-known, long-established official church. But they will often be in communion with self-serving small groups. And that is the introduction for today's discussion, because a wandering bishop, this is somebody who, as the definition states, doesn't want to be representative or part of a traditional church, have that control over them. To that extent, I respect those individuals, because you guys know what I usually wandering bishops is a derogatory term, and the organization that despises them most is, of course, the Roman Catholic Church. And I hate to say the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but to a certain extent, anyone who offends or pisses off the Roman Catholic Church, specifically the Vatican, well, they're okay with me up to a certain point. So I understand why somebody would want to not be in that structure anymore. It does, when you become Episcopus Vagans, you do get a freedom. You don't have any oversight, official oversight. You do have freedom to go about your worship the way you want to, the way you see fit. And naturally, doing things the way you see fit and being the leader of your self-serving group
can be very, very lucrative
and appealing
to the covert narcissist.
So tell us why, elaborate further why the question of the show is, or the title of the show, what we mean by wandering piety, by the way, is there's a term, fraudulent piety, which we're well familiar with. And that's when an individual will set himself up as the leader of a particular church, usually that which he establishes himself. And he's just in it for the money. He's in it for the tax break. He or she, there are women who have done this. So it's called fraudulent piety. It is kind of considered it's treated like kind of a crime. Under fraudulent piety, crimes can be committed, of course, tax fraud mainly. So wandering piety, a wandering bishop, they very often go around getting consecrated multiple places by multiple people. And it's kind of a wandering piety. In other words, they sell their dedication, belief to a church, to whatever serves them. So that's where I kind of got wandering piety. And Narcissus and the Appeal of Episcopus Vagans. You are the expert between us on the subject of narcissism.
Well, this type of wandering bishop type idea it's like we discussed, is very, very appealing to specifically the covert narcissist. Now, if we look at like the grandiose narcissist, this is somebody who just loves the flair of everybody noticing everything about them. And so we see a lot of celebrities in this environment, CEOs, tops of companies. This kind of thing is appealing to a grandiose narcissist. Mm-hmm. He would be considered, or she, there's a smaller percentage of female narcissists, but we do see a much larger percentage in the male kingdom.
Oh, yes.
Of this. But the one who is grandiose would be considered the wolf. No cover up. The covert narcissist is that sheep in wolf's clothing. That's that person who wants to be
the wolf in sheep's clothing.
The wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah. Did I say that backwards?
Yeah.
Sheep in wolf's clothing. Yeah, something like that. But you get what I mean. This person wants the adoration of worship itself. So to become a wandering bishop is super appealing to them. Not only do they not have the restrictions or accountability of some overseeing factor, but they also have the ability to set up their own parishioners. So these kind of people will set up home churches.
Yes.
Type thing. They will infiltrate other churches.
Yes.
And put themselves in a leadership type of position right next to the pastor of that church to begin a contract essentially with that church. And they'll do that multiple churches.
And let's not forget, they themselves, this is a common thing, in these so-called churches that these wandering bishops set up, these ones we're referring to, particularly the narcissistic ones, there will often be more clergy, consecrated clergy, than there are members of the church. So if there's like 12 members of a church, 9 of them will be consecrated wandering bishops. So, when you find an organization, this independent, small, obscure church, so to speak, and you see that it's a bunch of guys who are all wandering bishops or bishops at large, they refer to it. That's another one. There's kind of a red flag, a clue that there's something sketch about this particular church religion. And unfortunately, now not all wandering bishops are bad.
Narcissists,
Right?
Narcissists.
Yeah,
right.
there are people who you respect who could be. I may be wrong, but my understanding is that the author Peter Levenda is one, and I'm not aware of him going around. People still hold the Necronomicon thing. My God, people, come on. But there are people who, by default, in some instances, are technically Episcopus Vagans. We are talking about the problem bishops, the ones that are doing it for ulterior motives, and that is exactly the stock and trade of a narcissist, right? Is ulterior motive.
Well, here's the thing: the covert narcissist is the hardest one to spot because they don't come across in your face like the grandiose narcissist. This personality type or personality disorder will appear very humble, just as you would expect a pastor of a church to appear. They will know their stuff, meaning they know the scriptures. They spend a lot of time reading and so that they can sound smarter than everybody else in their congregation. Now, the thing about spotting them, though, is to knowing what types of questions to ask this person if you begin to think that you might be dealing with a covert narcissist or wandering bishop who is a covert narcissist. One of those things, really, really super important, because this is across the board with these kind of people, is they refuse any kind of accountability.
Right.
And they have a very, very, very hard time with answering the questions that have a yes or no answer. So if you keep it really simple and you try to nail them down on a simply yes or no answer, there's a big clue. If they can't do that, that would be a major red flag.
Is the covert narcissist considered a sociopath?
Absolutely. Yes. In fact, most therapists will not treat a covert narcissist. They consider them to be just not treatable.
Yeah, incurable.
Or this kind of thing. And a lot of that is because to get a narcissist into a therapy room to admit there's something wrong with them to begin with is extremely difficult.
Right.
They don't believe they have this.
So put one of these personalities in the pulpit, right? Put him at the head of what he perceives as his own church, and imagine the ego there.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the dangers of that.
Yeah.
What the dangers might be. Not only is it that this person is going to have the ability to make contracts with his or her parishioners. There's money involved with churches. There's always money involved, but there's also this type of fame, especially if you're in a small community. That kind of localized fame is what this kind of covert narcissist
based on image,
craves.
Based on this fraudulent, pious image.
Yeah, they just love it, because a natural reaction for most normal people to see somebody who's very Jesus-like is to worship them, in a sense, is to fawn over them.
Yeah, we're talking about the person who is projecting
so
this image of being Jesus-like or what
and
have you.
They love nothing more than to have a cheerleader. And so they get supply off of this. And so the more cheerleaders they can garner inside of their own little community, male or female, either way. If you're go ahead.
I'm just saying that, and they get these people because they're playing on superstition. They're playing on their spiritual beliefs, which is one of the most heinous manipulations that a human being can do to another person, because we all have our beliefs.
Well, good point, because that does bring up another common factor that we see, especially in today's covert narcissists, standing as wandering bishops, that they tend to hold tightly to the end days doctrine. These are the same ones who come up with a date, even the time and date of when the world is going to end.
So they have that string on their folks. Oh, by the way, they don't like the term wandering bishop, Episcopus, Vagans. They don't like that term usually. That gets them in a dither because they see themselves as entirely legitimate. Because here's how it works. If you're wondering why this is an issue, a true Episcopus Vagans, wandering bishop, their consecration, what consecration is a ritual, okay? And let me tell you about I'm going to be talking more about this on Wednesday night on the live stream, but there's a definition I want to share with you. And it is a phrase. Okay, this phrase in Latin is, and forgive my pronunciation if I don't get it right, ex opera operato, opera operato. The sacrament, not the priest, is the power. Okay, so it is a particular sacrament to be consecrated a bishop, not just being ordained as a priest. We're talking consecrated as a bishop. That's a higher level. Okay, it's a special thing. I have had a bishop I am personal friends with explain this to me. And here's the thing. There is valid and illicit. You can do a valid sacrament, the valid consecration on another bishop, because the sacrament itself is a ritual, a particular ritual. Illicit means it's not sanctioned or approved by any official church, okay? But it can be valid on the spiritual plane, the metaphysical plane. So what happens is you have a bishop that was consecrated in the official church, whether it be the Roman Catholic or the Orthodox, and they then have the authority, the spiritual authority, to consecrate anyone they choose. And this has happened. Okay, there's several of these 20th century bishops that I'll talk about further on Wednesday night. And what they did was in their lifetimes is they consecrated people who bishops who then went on to consecrate those who were not sanctioned by the church. Okay, and then once one of these non-sanctioned ones is consecrated, they have the spiritual authority and the knowledge to consecrate whoever they choose to. So they can consecrate all their buddies. And this is where it started. So my point is, you identify a wandering bishop, okay, and you find out who consecrated him, and then you find out who consecrated that bishop who consecrated him, and on. And it always traces back to a bishop recognized by an official church. And this is what really bunches up the panties in the Vatican, because it did start with bishops that they did approve. So what's interesting is, now, if you're someone who's an atheist and a pure materialist, you're sitting there laughing because this means nothing to you. Consecration, physical, metaphysical plane, spiritual, it's all a fantasy to the pure materialist atheist. Of course, I understand that. And to be honest, I'll elaborate further on Wednesday, and we'll get into here today. I find the uproar within the halls of the Vatican over this, it puts a smile on my face, because who cares what they think, and I respect someone who would want to break away from that authority. But anyway, that's just a little more context and history. To bring it back to the narcissist thing, think about it. A narcissist would love to have that spiritual power to make others, I shall consecrate you a bishop, and they probably, what am I trying to say? They probably use that as some type of power leverage.
Absolutely. Well, like let's take it in the context of suicidal cults that end up committing murder suicide with their whole group. I think pretty much across the board, that person who started the cult could be diagnosed a covert narcissist, in the sense they're going to have a complete lack of empathy. And if you think about it, to convince a bunch of people to commit suicide is a complete lack of empathy, care for our other natural human beings. But yeah, it's a big problem. And I would say the most dangerous are these covert narcissists who are consecrated wandering bishops, because it's things like that the process church comes out of. We have so many others, that the hand of death cult, these kinds of things that are all going to have.
Well, when I read the ex opere operatus, blah blah blah, ex opere operato. It's very the sacrament, not the person. This definitely, I'll be getting into this again on Wednesday, but this definitely appeals to the practitioner of ritual magic, whether they go into it being a Christian, so to speak, or a churchianist, or not. The idea of, whoa, wait a minute. To them, becoming one of these consecrated bishops is just like another level in World of Warcraft, or in their weird world of dark magic. To them. Yeah, this is just another title. And with it comes my ability to consecrate others on this spiritual level. And it's a great ego boost. And the
well, it's more than an ego boost. It's a constant supply to the ego.
Yeah,
it's not just something that's coming in and saying, "Whoa, I feel great about myself." The narcissist in general lives off of supply. It's often why they're called energy vampires, or suckers, even, because they're constantly sucking up your energy, your life force, that thing which they don't have.
Yeah.
They simply don't have it.
How do they react when you question their piety, their commitment to their professed religion?
You're going to see a narcissistic injury if you question their faith belief in any way. And what does that mean when you see a narcissistic injury? It could result in rage. It could result in them actually doing something in a retribution type manner.
Running around telling everybody you hurt their feelings.
These kind of people will pull out a temporary protective order on you. They will come out against you with their flying monkeys. They will just do everything they can to slander who you are, because you have questioned their faith. Their very existence is what they feel like you've questioned.
More to the point, you've questioned their authority in that faith, because they're trying to, the covert narcissist to whom this bishop consecration appeals to, they're somebody who is seeking to set themselves up as a community leader via a church. And now, naturally, they have their material motives. Through that church. They'll get their sustenance. They'll get their lodging paid for. They'll get their food paid for. They'll get their booze and cigarettes, paid for.
They are not hermits.
They're
get totally cars, social butterflies.
And they go around the local ecclesiastical community wherever they live to get credibility through association with the other preachers. And, unfortunately, that will include decent people who happen to be, another thing we want to say is, you often hear me being critical of certain aspects of, I use the term churchianity, which I learned from someone else. I'm being critical of those aspects. I see nothing wrong with people having a church in which they want to gather They agree on their particular hypothesis of, whatever the spirituality is. They want to gather and worship together, and then they want to go do things good for the community.
That's wonderful.
That is great. That's fantastic. Remember, my only problem is, and this ties in, I know you have something to say about this. My problem is when a group of people have their church and they start thinking that they know how everybody else should be living in their town, and they start meddling in society in ways that they should not. And this kind of thing appeals to and is where you'll find the religious narcissist.
The covert narcissist.
Well, specifically a religious. Let's call him an ecclesiastical or a clerical narcissist, because they may or may not, folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but the covert narcissist could possibly not actually believe in what he professes to believe, right?
Well, that's where your false piety comes in, because yes, they're putting forth a sense of piety, but most of the time it is false. Because, see, here's the core thing. The narcissist looks at his own true self as being a weak and slimy and worthless being. They do everything they can to hide their true self.
Their self-deprecation.
And they put everything into bolstering up their false identity, their false self. Wrapped up in that false identity and that false self, is the very core is that religion and that piety. Thus, you're going to get a false piety almost every time.
So they're unlike the egotist who projects self-deprecation and humility, but actually thinks highly of himself.
You? Yeah, quite the opposite. Because this one, our normal, general people who do have empathy, who are not suffering from narcissistic personality disorder, each of us have narcissistic traits. There is a natural need to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
But that's not the personality disorder that we're talking about.
And the healthy, normal narcissism, let's say with a small n, is like when you have those moments where you're proud of something you've accomplished, right? Where you're proud of yourself. You're going, you know what?
It would be bolstering your false self. When your ego,
so it's always bolstering your false self, but some are worse than others.
Even when normal people show narcissistic tendencies, in the sense of like, okay, how do I want to put this? Something that has majorly to do with the ego, that you overindulge and there's no guilt there, or there's no, oh, I shouldn't have done that kind of thing. There's, I deserved it, kind of sense. That's where we kind of might show some narcissism. And there's many, many other things too, without getting into too much detail there. But with the covert narcissist specifically, we almost always see that there is some kind of basis in faith and religion having to do with their false self, their false identity that they're bolstering. So that's always at its core is false. And then, as you stated before, there's pretty much always going to be some kind of background in ritualistic magic.
Very often, a lot of people that are drawn to getting this consecration do come out of the magic world.
Yes,
and that's what I'm saying is they see what they get from this consecration as just another like talent in, again, World of Warcraft or D&D.
Kind of. Here's one of the reasons why this happens. Because the narcissist became this way at a young age. It usually happened around 5 years old, sometime between 5 and 7, and they literally become stuck in that mental age. Their sense of understanding is to protect their own self, protect their own false identity. And they will do that at any cost to any person around them, to continue to protect not only that own false self, but also their supply, who and what they're getting their supply from. So that's why if you question the covert narcissist faith or belief, religion, understanding, they're going to take that as a personal slight, and they're going to do everything they can to protect that identity. A narcissist will often think that it's all black and white. There's no in between. You're either for them or you're against them.
Yeah. Oh, and to
There's
put a
no
finer
neutral
point on
parties.
it, aren't they like you're either for them in the exact way they expect you to be? It can't be, hey, I'm on your side, but I got some issues with, some aspects of you and how you do. No, you got to be all in.
All
right?
in.
Okay.
Yep. All in kind of thing. But yeah, so some other things, the ritualistic magic. So one of the reasons too that they tend to go towards ritualistic magic at a young age is the power. They're seeking not only the power to manipulate people, but they're also looking at illusion, maintaining illusion, and advancing their skill in illusions. And that's very attractive to them. There's also the sense of hurting other people, being the one to cause or cast a spell on another person which causes them harm. That brings the covert narcissist a lot of power, a lot of diamond level supply, we would call that.
And that's the appeal for a lot of these guys. And remember, folks, the reason we're talking about this, the reason, we see it as a problem is there's few things as bad when it comes to manipulating people in society. There's few things as bad as manipulating people in the context of their spiritual belief. Okay, because that's where you get to the core of a lot of people. And that's where, naturally so, fears and what some people would call superstitions come into play. And these covert narcissists who use these clerical, church positions, that's a particular brand of corruption and evil. And that's what this covert narcissist, type of person does when they have a clerical title, is they are taking advantage of good, well-meaning people, okay, by going through their spiritual beliefs. Oh, you better help me out with this, or you need to do this. You need to give to my church, or your soul, your salvation could be in peril, or your life will go so much better, if you heed my word, because they often set themselves up prophet-like. Okay, that's the false prophet thing. So this is why it really bothers me is you should not manipulate people through their spiritual beliefs. That's just wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
You may not agree with someone's spiritual beliefs, but you don't manipulate people the way a covert narcissist does through this kind of thing. And of course they see all this that I'm saying, and they see this as their leverage, their psychological leverage over their target, and it's really just to serve their ego, to serve their supply, as you say, to serve their needs, right?
Yep. Definitely.
And I'm sure you can turn on your TV, and I'm sure if you took even a halfway close look at some of the TV preacher guys, you're going to see narcissists in there.
You're going to see them.
I forgot who it was here in the live chat that pointed out that in the New Age community,
Oh,
my gosh,
Yeah,
there's a lot of this in the New Age community. And the wandering bishops, they have a foot in both worlds. But I mean, to give you an idea, David Ferry, okay? David Ferry, well known in the JFK assassination milieu, was a wandering bishop. He got someone to consecrate him, okay? So literally, and my source told me that anyone can be consecrated. Anyone, qualified or not, worthy or not. Once a bishop is duly consecrated, that bishop, he or she, most of these are males. Here we go again. Come on, guys. They can consecrate anyone. If they had and well, I don't know if they could consecrate. I was going to say like an invalid grandparent or something. I think you have to be of at least sound mind and alertness. And I read something about that. I'll be going into that more on Wednesday. But so when you think about it, another thing they'll do, I don't know if I mentioned this, is they will sell consecrations. And going back to what I said about a lot of the churches founded by wandering bishops, they have more clergy than they do members. Well, there's a sign that those member clergy who themselves have been turned into bishops, wandering bishops, Episcopus, Vagans, bishop at large, they're called sometimes. They have likely bought their consecration. Bought their way into it, So if they've had to, what you got to do is look at if they've, tithed or donated a particular amount of money toward that church shortly before or right before they get consecrated. There's your clue right there that they've just simply bought that, and this is something that the intention, it's not supposed to be sold.
Well, Jonathan wants to know if you can buy one for a friend.
I'm sure you could.
I'm sure, right?
I'm sure you could.
That's funny.
Now don't get me wrong. Accepted, officially sanctioned Roman Catholic priests for a long time, they would sell. What was the term? They would sell blessings,
confession like things.
No, there's a term for it. Live chat, help me out here. And so for all their brouhaha and their harumphing over wandering bishops, for all that Vatican and Roman Catholic leadership disapproval, they used to sell blessings and things like that. It's indulgences. Thank you, DK Ultra. Let's put DK Ultra's name up there.
Thanks, DK.
DK Ultra, thank you. Yes, indulgences. I mean, so I don't want to hear it from the Vatican, on this. I don't.
Well, some of the identifying factors, because not all preachers are covert narcissists. Not every,
that's right.
Is this.
Yeah, we want to emphasize that point, is that these guys we're talking about do not represent all of, the clergy.
Right.
There are some fine, good human beings out there that are Catholic priests, that are Protestant ministers. Not all are bad. Not all are doing it the wrong way. My personal criteria that I will be vocal about and loud is when any church starts thinking that they know how their city should live.
Well, one of the
this is America.
Let's talk about some of the identifying factors. How to find out if the pastor or church leader of which you are investigating or have questions about or just want to know for sure if this person is or isn't a covert narcissist. One of those identifying factors will be inevitably there will be high and large amounts of chaos going on within that group. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be panic because the covert narcissist uses that chaos and that panic.
Mhm.
They create it, though very, very rarely are you going to be able to pin down that it's this person who was stirring the pot. But inevitably there's going to be all of this stuff
Right.
going on in that person's community or church community building. So that's one way you can go, okay, this could be something dangerous that I'm in. Now, that's another thing I want to stress too. If you are following or being a part of a covert narcissist group, you are in danger. Inevitably. This is always going to end bad. If you have found yourself as a supply for one of these people, it's very, very important to not only get help, get information, but get away from them.
Yeah.
Because they just don't stop.
You are not going to fix them. You are not going to save them.
Mm-mm.
They partially bank on you having, they use that you having that sentiment.
It will feel very much like abandoning a child when you leave them, because that's one of their games. That's one of their ploys, is to get you to feel like you're taking care of them as you would take care of your own child.
Yeah, it's a bunch of mind games, and when they do it as the person standing in the pulpit, again, that's really heinous, because people who are otherwise going through life in their day with their walls up, right? And, the other things in day-to-day life don't get to them. When they go to church, for example, and participate in their church activities, they're kind of bearing themselves, right? They're exposing their vulnerabilities to that person that they're supposed to be able to trust. And when that minister, that preacher, that bishop at large, whatever, is one of these covert narcissists, they're at risk, and most of the time they don't even realize it until they're hooked in, until it's too late to get out without some type of damage, to their lives, to themselves, their psyches, or whatever. So yes. It's something that you got to be careful with and selective, where your spirituality is concerned. Because look, we don't all have to agree on our spirituality, okay? And no one group, I don't care how good they are, okay? Again, my big line, my big thing, I don't know how you feel about it, but my big thing is when one particular group, church, religion, or whatever, they start thinking that their way is the only right way, and that others need to be coerced or forced, right? Or society needs to conform to their specifics, not their general. Look, folks, we're not talking about a general philosophy, okay? There's religions that have a truly good general philosophy. It's in the application and in the practice where the crossing of lines come, as far as what's good and what's bad for society. And the covert narcissist, when they do become this independent clergyman, right? Independent, one of these wandering bishops, they very often start out as they adopt that outsider life, right? They go off to some far corner, okay, of their country or whatever, some far corner, small town or whatever, because that way they're away from any meaningful oversight, so they can get away with a lot.
Right.
And they also will find they'll look for the far corner where there are people who don't get, much exposure outside of their immediate area. And folks, with that can come limited awareness, limited knowledge. And that makes people even more susceptible to be supply targets for these guys. So they go, they look, they get away from the beaten path. It's certainly not in a big city, okay? And they go around setting themselves up as, the pious figure, somebody to follow. They don't say prophet, but they sure do imply it. And then they kind of lure in their followers, okay? And then they will build from there once they establish, their own organization enough to where it becomes their livelihood or it supplies their sustenance, the things they need. Then they start, okay, how do I expand this? How do I expand my supply? How do I expand my influence, thus control?
Well, yeah, exactly. And see, I believe at their core, they hate everybody. They hate everything and everybody. It's a jealousy thing.
Okay.
It's almost like they're constantly jealous of what everybody else has, and that they're just this deep-seated anger and resentment that they weren't given such and such things. Now that's the entitlement part, right? They believe they're entitled to what everybody else has. They're angry that they don't have it themselves.
Allow me to ask this, because this just popped into my mind here. We talked about now we're not picking on Christianity, okay? It's been mentioned before. We've said that the New Age community has a lot of people guilty of this closet narcissist setting themselves up as and becoming Episcopus Vagans, being consecrated as one of these independent bishops. Now, here's the thing. Getting into the mind of the narcissist who this appeals to, let's say you have, in the New Age community, you're more likely to find this. You have this closet narcissist who's gone and got himself consecrated, for example, setting up his own type of fellowship, or you can call it a church or whatever. But in the New Age community, this closet narcissist clergyman, let's say he could be somebody who had issues with mommy in his childhood. So now he sets himself up. He's replaced mommy with the goddess. Just like in Christianity, for example, we see this a lot. A clergyman, so-called clergyman, may be consecrated as one of these bishops. He had daddy issues. So he's replaced God. He's replaced daddy with God. The daddy who will never hurt him, the daddy who will never abandon him. Or, in the New Age, the mommy, the goddess will never hurt him. The goddess will never disregard him. The goddess will never hurt his feelings. So that's the real mommy. And that's because they're, it starts in their childhood. No excuse for it. No excuse, just because, we all had our moms and dads piss us off, or something, and we get over it. Okay, we get beyond it.
Yeah, and that hatred, you're right, Dee, because that hatred is internal to begin with. It's against themselves. They hate their true self. Their true identity is weak. And so those of us who really take the time to develop our true identity, to identify what our personality is, and expose our weaknesses, that is like kryptonite for a narcissist. It is just completely unheard of. They hate that true self, that inner self. And it's appearing weak to other people if they do that. And that appearance of being weak is just, it's not going to happen.
Now, remember, folks, we're talking about what would be considered more extreme levels of this. We all have things about ourselves we don't like. That's part of us keeping ourselves in line. You may look back and go, gosh, I'm weak there. I'm a pushover there. I'm not good at this or whatever. But you use that as a catalyst to be a little stronger, to be a little better at those things. It's not extreme. You're not beating yourself up to the point where you got to do this sociopathic.
That's the thing, though. What if you identify and you know for sure that you're dealing with somebody who has covert narcissist personality disorder? Mm-hmm. There's no in between. There's no kind of sort of has it, or just they might show a few tendencies here and there.
Right.
That's not reality. Not at all. Now, that some of us normal people might have adopted some narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, that's normal. But if you identify a true covert narcissist, there's no in between. They're only halfway there, or they're rehabilitated, or they can be rehabilitated. They very, 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 very super rarely do we find a narcissist who's been rehabilitated.
Look, the covert narcissist, which is what we're talking about here, the extreme, serious narcissist. This is the person who has crossed the line into sociopathy. They become a sociopath.
Psychopath.
Okay. The average person that we're talking about with these tendencies, they're not a sociopath.
No.
No matter how tough they may project themselves, they're not really where the rubber meets the road. Mm-hmm. They're not really going to do cold sociopathic things to other human beings. They tend to be softies at heart. The average person, when it gets down to it, it's hard for an average mentally healthy person to really do the cold. I mean, think about it. If you're a parent and sometimes you got to be tough on your kid, you don't like how that feels. You just know that it's necessary. It's just, there's a spectrum there.
I liked Banana Clips asked a question. Can you be a narcissist and still be a good person though? Well, technically I would say no to that, because to be a true narcissist, you are destroying the good parts of who you are to begin with at a young child. It's just not possible. It's not possible to be truly a good person and be a narcissist at the same time.
I disagree with DK Ultra. Sociopath is not good. The pain caused by narcissists is causal but not calculated. Wrong. I disagree with you. The closet narcissist, the serious problem narcissist that we're talking about, oh, hell yes, it's calculated. Please. Come on. I disagree.
Then again, I kind of see where that's coming from.
I get where it's coming from, but I disagree.
Yeah, both.
I'm talking about the extreme narcissist.
Why is it not calculated? Why would I say that? Because this person doesn't often, many, many, many times, does not think about what they're going to do before they do it. They are reactive people. Not
completely.
Almost always.
Maybe I'm coming from the perspective of having been a criminal investigator.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. And there's plenty of closet narcissists who are criminals. And I'm telling you, I just disagree with, okay, I'll tell you what, I will interpret, DK Ultra, I will interpret your not. I will not interpret it as never calculated. Generally not calculated. I'll agree with that if that's okay.
But the first part,
not picking on you, DK Ultra.
The first part of that is so accurate. I love how you put that. A sociopath is definitely this.
But why would we calculate DK Ultra? To determine what we're going to do. It is involved with our actions. So again, let me put a qualifier on my position. An extreme narcissist, like we're talking about. Your average person, I will have to agree with you that the average narcissist.
I like what Oswald said here earlier. Says, do y'all agree with Eve Lorgen that enabling narcissist is a form of suicide? Just straight off the bat, not knowing who Eve is, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. If you enable a full-blown narcissist, you're committing suicide. You are giving them the tools to destroy you. That's the bottom line of it. It's we got to do something about this, guys. This type of person has got to be reined in, and we've got to figure out how to deal with them, because we can't deal with them on a normal how we deal with each other. Even like, it's just different. They cause all sorts of chaos.
I like the now. Where's that comment that you just?
It's in between Darcy's and God the Son, Jesus Christ saves us back again. Should we give him a talking to?
Hold on. Where's that
one? Do you remember?
No. Oh, I'm going to address that.
There's Banana Clips and there's Oswald's.
They'll agree. Oswald Spanglish will agree with Eve Morgan. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so as long as people are well behaved, but if I see some spam, we got some wrenches in there that you don't. We got some wrenches in here today that you don't fool with, trolls. Okay, Johnny Side.
I thought we banned that one though.
Johnny Side and Modwiz know what we don't put up with here. So, trolls behave if you're out there. They changed their name a little bit and then they can come back. But if that's
that same one that was really nasty.
Oh, the guy that came in a couple weeks ago that has his own YouTube channel and basically is an asshole.
Probably a covert narcissist.
That even people in his own professed religion tell him that he needs to go take a hike. Anyway, so I think since we've meandered into the live chat, you want to start taking questions?
Yeah, let's say hi to Martin.
Folks.
And
all caps, if you want us to acknowledge your comment or ask your question, please. I know you've seen, if you're a newbie, I know you've seen me click comments up there that weren't in all caps. That's not the norm. The regulars will tell you I don't usually do that. So the rule is, please, all caps.
Nick, you better behave.
Okay, Nick. That's
You're gonna
right.
Be in trouble.
We're watching you. We're watching you. And yes, please be on topic. Thank you, Johnny Side.
Yes.
All caps and please be on topic.
And like Walter mentioned, he's going to go into some pretty interesting trails
in depth
on the wandering bishop part. He's been studying this for quite some time.
I've been aware. I learned about wandering bishops. I can't remember how many years ago. Some of my friends who are scholars know a lot more about it in them than I do. So I'll be picking their brains and stuff. But
are trolls the ultimate narcissist? Says CJ Star Monkey. No. In fact, actually, I think very few trolls are actually narcissists. Narcissists don't usually waste their time with that. Those are just your regularly angry people, I would say, because there's a big difference between just plain being mean and being a narcissist.
Not just angry though. Some trolls are immature males who really they're like when you're a kid in elementary school and there's the goofy class clown who wants the attention. A lot of trolls are just that.
Yeah.
And they haven't grown out of it if they're still trolling in their 30s and 40s. And there's a variety of motives for trolling. D.E. Sacone asks, why do positions of power attract the most extreme narcissists, and why are we often blind to it? Well, control.
Good question.
Controlling others, getting the adoration of others, right?
Well, that position of power, yes, is the adoration and worship of their false self, bolstering up that false identity that they've built since they were very young. But also too, like you were saying, a position of power makes it harder to bring that person down. It makes it more difficult. They have more flying monkeys. They have more people at their disposal to ruin and discredit that one person who might be questioning them. That's a big point too, that they have the sway of public opinion. That's really important to a narcissist to have that. So that's why they're usually attracted to people who are celebrities, who are extremely intelligent. They'll choose these people as their supply source because not only are they going to get ideas from that person, but they're also going to steal any kind of projects or plans or anything that you might accomplish, because they can't do that for themselves. They have to steal. They're just, it's amazing how not smart they are.
They lack real talents themselves in a lot of cases. So, people that, steal that kind of thing, intellectual property or works.
So I think that's a big reason why it's attractive to them, is the amount of supply they're able to garner and the level of supply. There is, basically, to explain really quickly the level, there's a base level and there's a high level and a mid-grade level. Mid-grade levels are easily disposable of. They're constantly replacing those. Your high level is someone or something that they are able to garner their supply from on a really large basis. It's working for them.
Well, and when you're leading a church, right? When you're a clerical narcissist, my gosh, that's a room full. The goal is to have a room full of supply.
Worshippers, yeah.
It's whereas some narcissists, they'll use a spouse as their supply, or they'll always have, they might have a relationship with one person, one woman, but they got 2 or 3 others lined up so that when that woman they're with gets tired of their bullshit and, realizes, wait a minute, what am I doing here? And leaves, they just replace her with another one. Well, the clergy narcissist, okay, they've got a whole room full, so that if they lose a member of the church, they've got, 15 or 20 others, or they go out and recruit another one. They just fill that seat in the pew, so to speak,
Well, here's the thing. Narcissists appear to be broken little babies to a healer or an empathic person. What I mean by that is that when you encounter a very small child who is obviously hurt, torn, and broken, an empathic healer is going to want to take care of that. And I think that's why so many of us fall for narcissists.
Because we're sympathetic human beings.
Because we're sympathetic to begin with. We want to heal them. We want to help make them feel better. Within
the context of religion, this what am I trying to say? The thing they're trying to heal, could it be their schism in their theology? They, in other words, they could have been, say, a Roman Catholic bishop, and because the Pope, representing Daddy in the organization, the papal edict or the Archbishop or whoever says, no, you're not in line. That's the offense, right? That's the, but and if they punish them, if they discipline, said clergyman, that's the offense. That's where they're feeling all butthurt. And that can be the thing that can drive them to go off and start their own version of their religion, their own church or temple or whatever the case may be. Again, we're not bashing just churchianity here, the Christian variety of this. There is heavily the New Age variety of this, and you know what? I don't know I don't know to the extent to which this exists in Islam. I don't know if Islam has a similar thing. We'll have to ask Cameron Pasha.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm sure
if
there
Sufism
is.
too,
I'm sure. Yeah.
we'll have to look into this. That could be an interesting discussion with Cameron.
Well, let's move on with
Yes.
the next one.
Oh, here we go.
We've got
Philip Blair. Philip Blair asks, what's the difference between a covert narcissist and borderline personality disorder who doesn't see a problem with BPD?
Well, borderline personality disorder is a big word for a essentially it's a term that's covering a lot of different issues with a person. Getting diagnosed with BPD is a lot more common than someone being diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah, I would think.
Borderline personality disorder is kind of more, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a doctor on this one, so this is coming just from things that I know.
We are having an informational, scholastic type of conversation.
It's kind of like, when it is somebody who's got like ADD or ADHD, however you call that, and he's going back and forth, and they're having some, they might have PTSD or CPTSD and other issues like that, where borderline personality disorder is, I think, much more treatable than narcissistic personality disorder. So there is some differences. Philip Blair, I would say if you really want to know more on borderline personality disorder, look up some resources, get some books on it, because that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a big subject in itself, which is interesting. D.E. Saccone, is narcissism much like vampirism? Yeah.
Well, a lot of people have correlated this, and primarily because of the energy sucking effect that the narcissist is able to utilize. Nobody's really been able to pinpoint how they do this, like give a description of how they actually garner some kind of something from sucking the energy out of you. How do they do this other than there's some kind of psychic paranormal event happening here too? It's kind of like the Celestine prophecy, where we see an aura that's being injected into and being pulled out of that other person.
Well, and it's interesting that, kind of a paranormal thread would pop in here, because we're specifically, what we're talking about is the religious closet narcissist, or the clerical closet narcissist. And,
which is using spiritualism.
And spiritual power, appeals to them. And Johnny Side says it's in paganism for sure. Think about a lot of the Wiccans I met are for sure. Yeah, it's in all spiritual systems. Yeah. I'm sure there are Tibetan, whatever they call their version of bishops, who are narcissists. This is a human problem. Luna says narcissists cause people to have these disorders.
My Luna.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So right.
So, Philip Blair asks, do they all have infallibility complex?
Yes.
Oh, a religious narcissist? Absolutely. Right? They really do. Look, deep down inside,
there's no accountability.
They think they are a prophet of God. Deep down inside, if they have sought out and they're seeking out some type of communal religious leadership, they believe about themselves that they are speaking for God, that God is working directly through them. And this leads to what I'm talking about when, their followers, they get their followers spun up and they themselves think we know what's best for people even outside our fellowship.
Well,
that's where they cross the line too. In a bad way.
These kind of covert narcissists, not only are they very attracted to home churches, but they're also very attracted to community-like living standards. So basically what they're trying to do is get lots of other people to pay for and live on a farm of some sort, to where everything is communal. They really, really like that communal type of environment, because that sets up for them a constant feeding, a constant supply that they are able to go to all the time. It keeps everyone in that communal type of environment under tabs. One of the ways, if you find yourself as a diamond level supply for one of these narcissists, one of the things that they're going to make you believe is that they know everything you do. They know all about everywhere about you.
They have an omnipotence.
What you like, what you don't like, what every expression on your face means.
And when that translates into the spiritual or religious vernacular context, think how much power that person can have over you when they're telling you that they're telling you that they know what God thinks about you, whatever you believe God to be.
Yeah, and then they can rain down the shame in that effect.
Yeah, and they do. They do. Oh, it's raining down shame is big with problem clergy. I mean, that's their talk about stock and trade. I mean, look, with the Roman Catholic Church and confession, all that is to get the priest to get, that was set up so that your priest would get your dirty laundry, folks. Okay. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying every priest abuses that, but that's why it was set up. Come on. Toter Kolev. Hi, Maliah and Walter.
Hi, Toter.
Is it possible the system of relationships is producing narcissistic individuals to reproduce its own patterns?
The system of relationships. Can you define that a little bit more for us, Todor? Let me try. Todor. You are in. I think he's up in Norway or Finland, if I remember right.
I don't recall.
Mr.
Somewhere.
Kolev.
But I think I get the idea. Meaning the way society, the way human beings do relationships. Does that engender an easier process for narcissists to, recreate themselves?
We've been able to figure out that it's nurture and not nature that produces a narcissist, meaning that we usually have an abandoned father figure. We usually have also a mother that's not there, that produces or creates the need for the grooming the young narcissist to make an image in their own mind of what that mother should be. And so when they get into relationships with other people, they're literally grooming them to fit that image in their own mind. And so when you start to break away from what that image is, that's what causes that narcissistic injury. That's what kicks in the survival mode of the narcissist, which is
and again
hell.
Move that into a religious spiritual context, and it's the same tactic, but for even a deeper result, I think, in many ways. Oswald Spengler says the cis and cisgender is taken directly. Is that true? I never heard of that. That's interesting.
Oswald, you come up with some of the coolest
What's
stuff.
Your source, Oswald? Because that's interesting. Modwiz 125. Native Americans had no prisons or troublemaking psychopaths. Accidents happened to those types.
They did. It's very true. Or in that tribe, they practiced banishment. Definitely. The troublemakers were banished. They were sent to be an example made out of them, essentially.
Banishment is that's a real there's something about that offends my personal sense of human ethics.
You have to understand.
Alienate someone just because they don't conform to your control.
No, what they're saying, a banishment punishment would be like, okay, you get a complete covert narcissist that is hurting everybody around them. They're not going to change. They're using their own children to cause pain to others. and they're just totally not doing good for the tribe. There are certain parameters,
Mm-hmm.
and there's many warnings. It's not like they just come in and say, okay, you're out of here. You're not allowed to be with our tribe anymore. This is very different from the Mormon type of banishment.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
This is like going through, they are just not willing to change behaviors that's breaking the social contract.
Yeah. Okay. I get you. DK Ultra, do you think religious narcissists experience sexual excitement when their flock take communion? I don't know. I hadn't thought of that. Certainly the religious narcissist, I think, is the type that would engage in sexual activities with members of their church.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, a covert narcissist isn't moved by sex. They just aren't. They find sexual gratification in other things than just that.
Okay.
So that's why I find that interesting, DK Ultra, because that's very possible that doing some kind of a rote sacrifice or ritual like sacrament would be pretty gratifying for them, and maybe even bring up to an elation of that kind of gratification.
Yeah. Johnny Side asks, is it me or does this perfectly describe Scientology?
Yeah.
It describes a lot of religions out there.
Yahwehism.
It describes Scientology, various brands of Yahwism, Roman Catholicism, right?
Oh, yeah.
All aspects of Mormonism.
Branches,
Mormonism. Anywhere you find a religious leader doing the kinds of things we're talking about to control in the way that, the closet narcissist controls, it's going to characterize their religion. That's just the way it's going to be. It's going to characterize.
Yeah.
Oswald Spengler says Calvinists are predestined to become narcissists.
Did you see what Oswald said? Oh, no, you've got to go down. I see.
I'm still scrolling.
Oh, yes, Oswald. Very true. I don't know why it's not showing.
Modwiz says, thank you, Maliah, for distinguishing nature from nurture. Yes.
Yeah, very important one.
And Philip Blair, haven't heard from him in a long time. I like joking with Philip. You're reminding me of the licensed psychologist Jody Hildebrandt in Utah, who recently pled guilty after having
tormented
her clients, including tying children up with duct tape and starving them. Oh my God.
Wow.
Yikes.
Yeah, Utah has got some facing the music to do with their level of child abuse that's been going on since the 80s at least.
Toter Kolev. Yes, like the group dynamics needed that narcissistic gravity to keep the group together.
Wait.
Yeah.
Like the group dynamics need that narcissistic gravity.
Need that gravity to keep the group together. Ooh.
Very deep.
Well, if you interpret that in that the narcissist creates a system, a method, or a theology that makes him indispensable, yes, the answer is yes.
Well, it creates a really good mental image right there, because it's kind of like an atom and neutrons going on. There's constantly this cycling of that a group like that does for a narcissist. It's always maintaining that constant supply from various different people. It's just cyclical.
Yeah. Okay. Mod was 125. Communities must be able to mount an immune response to its body politic. Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. Like that's why I said you got to be careful with the banishment thing is all I'm saying. You don't just use it for unruly children, so to speak, or a wife who doesn't obey you. You don't do things like, you don't use banishment for situations like that.
Yeah. And Oswald, I totally count the Hebrew Israelites all in one group, black and white. Yes, there's a major offshoot of black Hebrew Israelites, but we find in the white Hebrew Israelites pretty much the exact same thing. And so I've grouped them all into one cult name, which is called Yahwehism or Yahwehists. That's one thing they all have in common is they're worshiping this very angry, very wrathful,
Pretender God.
Pretender God. Yes, and we believe, along with Farrell, that this Yahweh is an implant.
Farrell and DeHart
And
in their wonderful book. But they're not the only scholars, that point out that Yahweh is a pretender God.
Mm-hmm. A supplanter or implanter, what you would call
that. And for Christians who are uncomfortable with me saying that, Christ himself said it, right? You are a son of your father, the devil, and a liar. Yep. He said that to the followers of Yahweh. So make of that what you will. What you will, Rollo. What you will. What's that from?
I don't know.
From Somewhere in Time. Mm. When he successfully travels in time and he wakes up in the room he went to sleep in, but 80 years before or whatever, that room's occupied by a couple and they're bickering and he's hiding behind the couch. And the husband says, "What am I to make of this, Cecily?" And she says, "What you will, Rollo, what you will." The shit that just pops into my head.
So what I mean by implant or supplanter is that
an usurper.
A usurper, yeah. That there's something going on here.
Not an usurper. He set himself up.
He set himself up.
He's a pretender God. Now, here's an interesting concept, with this that comes to mind. Sir Walter Scott, the author of Ivanhoe, and he wrote a version of Robin Hood that, is famous. Anyway, Prince John in Robin Hood, think of Prince John as Yahweh, because the real king, right, Richard the Lionheart, he's away. He's away and he's fighting a war. He's off at the Crusades. And Prince John has set himself up on the throne, and is a bad leader. He's wrathful. He's, corrupt and all of that. Think of Prince John in Robin Hood as Yahweh. And the real God, the real king, the real God is off, somewhere taking care of something, but Prince John ain't it. This was the author, Sir Walter Scott, basically saying this through literature. Replica could be a word. So, and Tordor says, "Thank you, Maliah and Walter. It's great visualization." So
thanks for being here, Todor, and everyone.
So, certain theologies would appeal to a closet narcissist. Okay. The idea, you get yourself consecrated and you're going to be taken seriously. Okay. You're going to be taken seriously by people who admittedly are less cynical than I am. I don't get all flustery or, what's the word for it? Just because I'm in the presence of a clergyman. Okay. They don't intimidate me. They basically are scholars who have, committed themselves to
theology.
A discipline, a professional discipline that happens to be in the field of theology and religion and such. I don't immediately disrespect them because if I don't know the individual, I'm not going to judge them or disrespect them because they could be honest. They could be one of those many, many good clergymen and clergywomen out there that are doing it right. But I got to tell you, I just do not see any clergyman as any step closer to God than any of us. I just honestly, sincerely don't, because they are, they're not closer by virtue of being in the clergy. Okay. They could be by other virtues. All right. certainly they could be closer to God, so to speak, than I am because of other virtues, but it's not their title. It's not that collar around their neck. It's not whatever hokey pokey Zumba Roomba was done in a particular ritual. Okay. No. So did you have anything to, oh, here we go. Here we have another comment. Modwiz 125, Hebrew ontology was adopted by the West to its detriment, in my opinion. Yahweh is a poor example of a creator. Right. Exactly. I'm sorry. The God that Christ talks about, there's no way that's the same entity, figure that is running around the Old Testament, telling the Hebrews to slaughter this group, man, woman, and child.
Destroy all
because
of his
he wants them to
have
the Hebrews to have their real estate. Give me a break. Give me a break. I just,
not making sense.
And don't tell me, oh, well, they were iniquitous. There's scholarship that will show you that, for instance, I think one particular group that Yahweh ordered them to destroy at no time in other histories or whatever were they seen as iniquitous, evil people until Yahweh wants his followers to take their real estate. Then all of a sudden they're these baddies. Nah, that's, I agree with you, Modwiz. Yikes. Philip Blair, I recently learned that the Know Nothing Party was a party of Protestants, deists, and Jewish Americans who came together to oppose Roman Catholic influence in the 1850s. And desegregated schools in Massachusetts in the 1850s. This Massachusetts legislator had a record of low percentage of formally trained. Yeah.
Oswald, is there a cure to narcissism? No.
Yeah.
Simply put, no. And in fact, most therapists won't even treat a diagnosed narcissist.
A serious hardcore, right?
That's
a
how
closet
bad it is.
diagnosed or whatever.
Yeah. We just don't have much.
Okay. DK, was it in all caps? Did I miss your question about Stockholm syndrome? Because I was looking at all caps.
Yeah, throw it back in there, DK, because I did not see that either.
Yeah. If it's not in all caps, then we missed it. And scrolling up to look for it is going to take a lot longer than just.
DK, suddenly I want to start singing Highway 61 by Bob Dylan. God said to Abraham, kill me a son. Right? I mean, you really start to think about this and unpackage what we're handed to. It's a pretty bloody, vengeful, revengeful deity that we're handed. And it seems like, well, more than it seems like, for covert narcissists, this kind of deity is very attractive.
Sure.
Destroy all my enemies, Yahweh.
Yeah.
Bring them down, those who don't believe in me. This is so attractive to the covert narcissist because that is putting the power of all those who are against or don't believe that narcissist, is putting the power in a spiritual sense. So again, with the magic, again, with the paranormal part of wishing the destruction of people who maybe just simply don't believe what you believe in.
And that's where, again, that's my general problem with some religious groups out there is they get all stirred up because one or more among them have a problem with other people not believing the way they believe. Mm-hmm. This is, to me, one of the most heinous, most disgusting traits of some religious groups. Mm-hmm. This idea of conversion, you must convert, convert or die, that kind of thinking, or you convert. I live in a town where some years back, we have a local, I wouldn't call it a super church, but it's one of those big churches that has a school and big parking lot, fancy sign with a fountain. Mm. And they got some of their folks on our city council. And I remember, here comes my gray beard, you kids get off my lawn stuff. I remember one night I stopped to get gas at the Valero, went into the mini mart, and I was going to buy a beer to take home and have. And it was after midnight. Now, this, folks, by God, is Southern California, where I'm born and spent most of my life. California. Okay, we don't have blue laws out here. So here I am, a grown adult in my 40s. I go to buy a beer, and the guy can't sell it to me. Oh, it's after midnight. I'm not allowed to sell it to you. I'm like, what the hell? I bought beer here after midnight before. He goes, well, it's a new city ordinance. We can't sell that. And I looked into this, and I found out that it was the result of, I think they got 4 people on the city council, and they decided that people should not be allowed to buy beer or wine after midnight. We have decided because we are pious, and that's what the Lord, and I'll tell you, I remember thinking, you sons of bitches. I didn't survive Iraq during that war and Afghanistan 3 or 4 times during that war and serving my country for 20 years to have some goddamn son of a bitch at a church tell me that I can't buy a beer after midnight in the United friggin' States of America. I feel strongly about churches telling societies what they can and cannot do. Well, from what I understand, they didn't last long on the city council, because if I'm not mistaken, you can buy beer and wine, after midnight now in my town. But
you alcoholic, Walter.
I'm not even a boozer. It's this is something that I do occasionally. But it's the principle of the friggin' matter. And I had served my country for these rights and these principles. And I'm not going to have some asshole group who thinks they know better, another group of fucking Americans, who think they know better, to tell me I can't, right. And this is what I'm talking about. I love doing that once in a while. Just telling people what I really think. Anyway. Did he restate the...
I didn't see it. I do need a short break.
Well, we're wrapping up here because we're at an hour and a half. How the F did Dylan become a Christian preacher for a couple of decades? Rodney Stubber says... Rodney's cheerleading you on. Oh, I hate this jumping screen crap. Thank you, Rodney. I'm sorry. Religious fanatics who think you know how society should be, you're on notice where I'm concerned. Assholes. Keep it to yourself. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Most people I know who are good church-going folks, they agree with me. Yeah. They're not out there trying to tell you.
And like solution-wise, what do we do if we realize or we come to identify a covert narcissist being a part of our life? Really, the only thing you can do is protect yourself and get away, isolate yourself from that person. No contact. That's pretty much what you hear across the board.
Yeah.
Go, no contact. Get away from this person.
That's right.
Because there's no rehabilitating them.
No.
You're not going to save them. You're not going to change them.
They are not worth your soul, your life, your sanity.
Yep.
They're not worth it. ModWiz 125, and this will be the last thing today. To a mystic, relationship with the Creator is very personal and intimate. Kiss and tell is poor manners. Religion is for non-mystics. I agree with that. Intelligence plays a role too.
ModWiz, that's awesome. Yes. We should all take that and write that down.
Well, that's an hour and a half. I think we're done. That's enough for today. What do you think?
Yes, thank you, Paul from Newcastle. Hi, glad you made it. And everybody else, happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. And we will be seeing you on Wednesday with more on Episcopus
Vagans. and stuff. So, okay,
Yes.
folks, thank you all for turning out, and good crowd today. And we will see you
Wednesday.
on Wednesday.
Yep.
And next Saturday.
Bye, everyone. Good night.